Last summer, when I was doing my internship in Mongolia,
you have faced the obstacle of fear before, and you turned it into fuel to stand up for what is right. You showed the world that MIT wants a free Palestine.
It's graduation season. Recently, there are two commencement speeches that became viral across Pacific. One from Harvard and one from MIT. One by the first Chinese national ever to give a commencement speech at Harvard Yard, and one by Indian American Megha Venmuri, who used the opportunity to stand up for Palestinian people, which led the MIT authority to ban her from her own graduation ceremony. The Chinese audience have reacted strongly to both speakers. They love one speaker while hated on the other. You will never guess which is which. Hello, my friends. I'm Carl Zha. You are watching Silk and Steel podcast, where I focus on everything China, history, culture, and politics. Recently, Luanna Jiang, the first Chinese national to give commencement speech at Harvard Yard, became viral on Chinese social media for a post-speech interview she gave. Now, she became viral both for things that she said in front of the camera and for things that was happening behind her while she was giving the interview. Take a look.
The message itself is, if I have to put it into one sentence, it would be humanity rises and falls as one. I think we are living in a very difficult time. There's a lot of divisions in terms of ideas, ethnicities, identities, and I think this is a time where we can use a little bit more moral imagination and imagine ourselves being connected with one another. Yeah, I think, it's particularly important because there's a lot going on outside Harvard, the conflict, the geopolitical tensions, and especially important in Harvard because students can be very emotionally charged because they deeply care about a lot of issues. And when you are emotionally charged and activated, it's very easy to demonize another person.
This is some of the Twitter comments. Considering she and her father are funded by US-backed NGO, this pushed the story to another level. The fight is even more exciting than what she said. Lo, this video tells you it's in the States without telling you it's in the States. The timing of her words, "we fall as one," was perfect for what was happening behind her. In Volume 4 of the updated America Against America, Wang Hulin will refer to this interview as an example of the impending decline and fall of the American empire. This shit is even more late empire than the actual Roman late empire itself. It feels like satire, but it's actually reality. Truly, the imagination knows more bounds than real stupidity. A dog attempted to break the fight. Ha 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 ha. What the hell is she talking about? She reminds me of Kamala's word salad. In the meantime, Megha Venmuri took the opportunity of her commencement speech at MIT to take a stand for the Palestinians. Take a lesson.
It is no secret that at this time, academic institutions across the country are shrouded in a dark cloud of uncertainty. The question of what will happen next echoes in our minds, and there is a lot of fear in many of our hearts. We must remind ourselves that when we came to this institution, we dreamt of the opportunity to make an impact on humanity. We have been given the privilege of access to a place like this, to a community like this, and it is now time to make use of it. We cannot allow fear to keep us from doing that. You have faced the obstacle of fear before, and you turned it into fuel to stand up for what is right. You showed the world that MIT wants a free Palestine. Last spring, MIT's undergraduate body and graduate student union voted overwhelmingly to cut ties with the genocidal Israeli military. You called for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. And you stood in solidarity with the pro-Palestine activists on campus. You faced threats intimidation, and suppression coming from all directions, especially your own university officials. But you prevailed because the MIT community that I know would never tolerate a genocide. Right now, while we prepare to graduate and move forward with our lives, there are no universities left in Gaza. We are watching Israel try to wipe Palestine off the face of the earth, and it is a shame that MIT is a part of it. The Israeli occupation forces are the only foreign military that MIT has research ties with. This means that Israel's assault on the Palestinian people is not only aided and abetted by our country, but our school. As scientists, engineers, academics, and leaders, we have a commitment to support life, support aid efforts, and call for an arms embargo, and keep demanding now, as alumni, that MIT cuts the ties. Now, I invite you all to join me in the tradition of turning the ring. Please raise your brass rat or grad rat bearing hands, and as you lift it off your fingers, notice that the beaver is no longer facing you. It is now facing the world. This is a world that we will be entering with an immeasurable responsibility. We will carry with us the stamp of the MIT name, the same name that is directly complicit in the ongoing genocide of the Palestinian people. And so we carry with us the obligation to do everything we can to stop it. Class of 2025, you are MIT. Pressure is nothing to you. I know you will take it head on, and I can't wait to see what you do next. Thank you, and congratulations again.
For her speech, MIT has banned Megha from attending her own graduation ceremony. Now, there's a Chinese saying, 没有比较就没有伤害, which literally means if there's no comparison, then there's no real damage. Having viewed both viral interviews, Chinese netizens are mercilessly slamming Luanna Jiang, the first Chinese student ever to give a commencement speech at Harvard, and heaping praises on Megha Venmuri. I will let the netizens of Weibo speak for themselves in the screen caps below. The machine translation is a little rough, but I will try to self-correct. They're reacting to Megha's speech, but contrasting with Luanna Jiang's commencement speech. Some speak out, others are packaged selfishness. By contrast, Jang is much smarter. What is a well-packaged egoist? Jang is such a typical example. MIT should be proud to have such graduates. This is countless grades higher than Miss Jang. Jang is a fake big sky from Shaolian background. There's no comparison. Now, this is a little bit rough. This person is actually saying Jang is a big empty fake from Shaolian background. Now, Shaolian refers to the system of recommendation back in the Han Dynasty, before China has developed a series of civil service exam to allow people to enter into official bureaucracy. So back then, the only way to become an official is through recommendations by higher ups for your supposedly filial piety and honesty. But in reality, all work out to be a old boys network of patronage. In other words, nepotism. So they're saying Jang is a nepo baby and Megan is so much higher than that. What's Jang's position on Israeli-Palestinian issue? This is an intellectual elite with conscience. Again, they're talking about Megha. She sees a big picture. There are too few high-quality students with conscience. She is so much higher level than Miss Jiang. This is heroine, the real meaning of heroine. This is a scholar with knowledge, culture, and human nature. Although I don't like Indians, I still want to give this girl some praise. Okay, this person is obviously prejudiced against Indian people. Newbie, the real youth of our generation, our role model. This Indian girl has changed my impression of India a little. So for the sake of fairness, this is Luanna Jiang's Harvard commencement speech in full.
Last summer, when I was doing my internship in Mongolia, I got a call from 2 classmates in Tanzania. They had a very urgent question: how to use their washing machine. Because all the labels were in Chinese, and Google kept translating a big button as spinning ghost mode. There we were, an Indian and a Thai, calling me, a Chinese in Mongolia, to decipher a washer in Tanzania. And we all studied together here at Harvard. That moment reminds me of something I used to believe when I was a kid, that the world was becoming a small village. I remember being told we will be the first generation to end hunger and poverty for humankind. My program at Harvard is international development. It was built on this exact beautiful vision that humanity rises and falls as one. When I met my 77 classmates from 32 different countries, the countries I knew only as colorful shapes on a map turned into real people with laughter, dreams, and the perseverance to survive the long winter in Cambridge. We danced through each other's traditions and carried the weight of each other's worlds. Global challenges suddenly felt personal. If there's a woman anywhere in the world who cannot afford a period pad, it makes me poor. If a girl who skips school out of fear of harassment that threatens my dignity, if a little boy dies in a war that he didn't start and never understood, part of me dies with him. But today, that promise of a connected world is giving way to division, fear, and conflict. We're starting to believe those who think differently, vote differently, or pray differently, whether they are across the ocean or sitting right next to us, are not just wrong. We mistakenly see them as evil. But it doesn't have to be this way. What I've gained most from Harvard isn't just calculus or regression analysis. It's to sit with discomfort. Listen deeply and stay soft in hard times. Because if we still believe in a shared future, let us not forget those who we label as enemies They too are human. In seeing their humanity, we find our own. In the end, we do not rise by proving each other wrong. We rise by refusing to let one another go. So, class of 2025, when the world feels stuck in spinning ghost mode, just remember, as we leave this campus, we carry everyone we've met across wealth and poverty, cities and villages, faith and doubt. They speak different languages and dream different dreams, and yet they've all become part of us. You may disagree with them, but hold on to them, as we are bound by something deeper than belief, our shared humanity. Congratulations, class of 2025.
Now, it's understandable why Chinese netizens are heaping praise on Megha Venmuri because many Chinese people hold sympathy for the Palestinian cause, and they saw what Megha did as an act of bravery, even at risk of her postgraduate career. But why are they reacting so negatively on Luanna Jiang? Arnaud Bertrand is a French entrepreneur and long-term resident of China. He wrote a thoughtful piece that I thought I would like to share. The reaction to Luanna Jiang's Harvard commencement speech in both China and the US are really interesting to study, in that they're so illustrative of the current zeitgeist in both countries. First of all, let's be clear. Her speech wasn't well received on either side at all. Just to verify this, last night I showed a picture of Luanna Jiang to my wife and some of her friends, all Chinese moms in their 40s who don't follow politics at all, and asked them, "Have you heard of this girl?" And they all reply in unison, "Yes, she's hated in China." Granted, not a perfect proxy for the Chinese mood overall, but pretty illustrative nonetheless. The same story on the US side, where unsurprisingly, given current paranoid McCarthy's atmosphere, her being Chinese and this being Harvard, many people saw her as a validation of Trump's administration's unhinged narrative that university is coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party on its campus. This already contains itself a contradiction, criticizing the US for being an agent of China, but actually hated in China. I won't dwell too much on the US side. I think everyone understands all too well the paranoid binary thinking that's taken hold, where any Chinese person who doesn't actively denounce their origin is automatically suspect. The Chinese side is a bit more nuanced and counterintuitive, as you would think that the first ever Chinese national to give a commencement speech at Harvard would be seen positively, if only because he represents a breakthrough moment for Chinese representation abroad. But no, it wasn't perceived like that at all. First of all, her speech, of which you should have already seen, was problematic. If you read it or seen it, there isn't actually anything fundamentally wrong with it. It's her own story, that of a privileged international student, reflecting on shared humanity and global interconnectedness, the sort of saccharine, buzzword-filled idealism that may sound profound in Harvard auditorium, but is ultimately just hollow platitudes. Why is it badly received in China? For the very reason it sounded like Harvard commencement speech template number 5, that there wasn't anything real or authentic about it, the kind of speech designed to speak to a Western liberal elite audience. Fundamentally, Chinese were disappointed that the first ever Chinese national to give a commencement speech at Harvard didn't sound Chinese at all. She sounded like a hollow Western liberal. As such, this wasn't China on stage. She was a symbol of everything ordinary Chinese people resent about a subset of their own elites, someone who had reneged on the real Chinese identity and transformed herself into a perfectly polished Western liberal mouthpiece, cutting any genuine connection to her roots in favor of assimilation into Western orthodoxy. There's that expression in China, 白左, literally white left, which has very negative connotation. It's perfect adjective for her speech, exactly the sort of condescending, out of touch idealism that the Chinese, who are fundamentally pragmatists and hate words over substance, sees as the worst kind of privileged moral posturing, offering performative virtue signaling while ignoring the real challenges people actually face. Luanna Jiang gave a separate interview that went viral on Chinese social media where you see her speaking about her idealism on Harvard campus while you can literally see two guys fighting in the background. You couldn't find a better encapsulation of the Baizuo mentality, completely absorbed in delivering her own moral platitude while remaining utterly oblivious to the real world conflict happening literally right behind her. All that being said, it wasn't her speech itself that got her most of the backlash in China, but rather her reaction to some of the criticism on Weibo, where tellingly her username is Hafo Zhang Yuzong Luanna, i.e., Harvard Zhang Yuzong Luanna, as well as Chinese netizen digging into her background. So I thought I'd to share Luanna Zhang's defense of herself on her Weibo post, and I have it translated here. This is Luanna Zhang's her own defense. When people say I gave a lame speech, I just smile. You can go check oversee TikTok. My Harvard commencement speech has already blown up. If you search Harvard, it's the first thing that came up. A lot of headline mention Chinese girl from Qingdao. One clip already have 177,000 likes, 26,000 shares, and millions of views. Even the lowest performing one have 85,000 likes. The comments are overwhelmingly positive. Many people said they cried. As a Chinese person, I believe we should seize the mic on the world stage, go out and connect with others, let people outside hear our voices. Friends from India, Canada, Denmark, Singapore, Latin America all told me they saw my speech featured in their local media and forums. When I gave the speech, the entire Harvard yard, thousands of people, stood up and applauded. A professor who's been at Harvard for 50 years told me he had never seen such a student speech receive this kind of praise. That day, after the speech, I was walking back to my dorm. It's usually a 10-minute walk, but it took me over 2 hours because I keep on getting stopped. I was still wearing my graduation gown and Chinese style cloud shoulder cape, very eye catching. People on the street saw me from afar and came running up with compliments. A whole group of people eating at nearby restaurants saw me through the window and came out to wave and shout greetings. Everyone, whether they knew me or not, came up to say hi. Professors, classmates, family members, staff, even security guards and police officers stopped to praise me. Some even asked for photos. Well, this actually stirred a hornet's nest, which, as Arnold pointed out, that her knee-jerk reaction to the criticism was to invalidating it by saying she received a lot of positive reaction in the Harvard yard, which of course demonstrate exactly what the Chinese citizens find so infuriating. She was using approval from American liberals as her yardstick, apparently oblivious to the fact that this was precisely what she was criticized for. The Chinese citizens started to look into her background, which only fueled the anger further. They discovered she was a classic Fu Er Dai, second generation rich, who had attended elite UK boarding schools and lived a life of extraordinary privilege, exactly the kind of wealthy overseas Chinese that ordinary people resent. Worse still, people find the timeline inconsistency in her resume and begin to question whether she actually holds Chinese citizenship at all, potentially make her the first Chinese national to give Harvard commencement speech narrative a complete fraud. All in all, what emerged was a picture of someone who embodied everything ordinary Chinese people despise, a wealthy overseas Chinese elite who bought her way into Western institutions, adopted Western liberal values wholesale, and was trying to speak for China while having no authentic connection to the Chinese experience whatsoever. What does this say about Chinese zeitgeist today? In some ironic way, it's not that different from the pushback you will get in the US against the globalist. In both cases, you have popular anger directed at privileged elite who are seen as having traded their authentic national identity for membership in a transnational liberal class that speaks in the polished platitude of global liberalism and is fundamentally disconnected from the concerns of ordinary people in their home countries. And again, ironically, that might in fact be an interesting way to bring China and US together. Say for the sake of argument that Luanna Jiang, instead of giving her hollow liberal speech, had stood up at Harvard and delivered a blistering critique of how we are creating a rootless international class that speaks in sanitized platitude while remaining deaf to their own people's actual struggles. Such a message would have found enthusiastic audience in both Beijing and Middle America. The irony is that it would have been infinite more compatible with the messaging of the Chinese government, which itself loathes Baizuo liberalism, but she also likely wouldn't have faced accusation of being a CCP agent in the US, which is in itself says a lot about the need to have real China voices in US as opposed to voices like Zhang's. If Americans actually encounter genuine Chinese worldview with its distrust of rootless elite and emphasis on cultural authenticity, they might discover that they actually like it. Well, friends, what do you think? Leave in the comments below, what do you think about this? And what would you like to see more on my channel? I'm Carl Za, and you are watching Silk and Steel Podcast. Thank you for watching. Until next time, bye bye.